Hi, my name is Sean Dengler. I'm the Innovation Hub Lab Manager, and today we are going to do the training on the Epilog Mini 50-watt laser. One thing important about this laser is the power. Back here is a 50-watt laser tube. How a laser works is it does shoot a beam through a series of mirrors and then into your workpiece where it focuses through a lens to your workpiece. So how high above your workpiece the laser is very important. Also, what's very important about this laser is the size of the piece that can be put into it. This one, like we said, is a 1 by 2 foot laser, so this is the largest piece that can fit inside it. Also, some of the materials that can be cut on this laser, woods, acrylics, leathers, paper, no metals, and probably the maximum thickness that it can cut, about 1/4 inch of the wood or acrylics is probably about the thickest that it can do. Leathers, probably I would just say 1/4 inch is by rule about the thickest it can be. I'm going to show you how to turn on the laser. There is a switch over here on the side, so we turn it on. It goes through its boot up. It just homed the machine, and at this time we're going to put in our workpiece. Okay, it's now at this time that there's 2 ways to focus this laser. We can do what's called an autofocus, where the computer will set the focusing. It uses a little plunger gauge. Or we can do what's called a manual focus, and that's what I'm going to show you now. A manual focus is, let's say you're doing something that's curvy and you want to target a certain area, maybe on your cell phone. We can use a manual gauge to set that focus. And I like to start off with that because understanding how to do that makes you much more powerful with your laser. So I'm going to do that now. First thing we do is you have to turn off the motors on the laser, and I do that by what's called XY off go. That turns off the motors on the laser and allows me to freely move around the focal point by hand. And I'm going to move it to the place that I want to focus to, and I'm now able to drop the Z of the bed. Over here on a hook on the right hand side is this manual focus gauge. We're going to place that at the front of the laser, and I'm now going to use the Z up and down arrows, and I'm moving the part up just to where it touches that manual gauge. I now take that off and hang it back on our hook. At this point, your Z is set and you no longer need to worry about it. It is at the right height for that focal point to burn your piece. If I hit reset, it now returns back to the home and we're ready to go to the computer and start cutting. Okay, so I'm already here, but you're going to want to locate on the desktop a green icon that says CorelDRAW. Click on that and it'll open up the program, and at this point it's going to ask you what size of artboard you want, and you're going to want to put in 24 by 12. If you hit OK, the artboard dimensions are up here as well in the upper left corner. So make sure that's 24 by 12 because that matches the size of the Epilog laser. For this tutorial, I like to teach how to do a small name tag because it shows you how to both etch or engrave some text and then also vector cut the outside of the name tag. So we're going to start by, I'm going to grab a rectangle. I'm going to come over here, and I'm not going to worry about how big the rectangle is yet because I'll show you how to type in the dimensions. If you'll notice up here at the top, it switched from how big your artboard is, which is, by the way, this gray rectangle here, to the information about the part you're drawing. And I'll grab a selection arrow. And right now it's saying there's the dimensions of this rectangle, and there's the dimensions of this center relative to this upper left point. Where you put this on this artboard is where it's going to cut this name tag, with the exception if you use what is called center engraving, then wherever this artwork is, it's going to tie this center to the dot on the laser. for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to let the artwork decide where my name tag is going to be, and I'll put it in the upper left-hand corner. All right, first of all, I'm going to make it up here 3 inches wide by 1 inch tall. And I want to point your attention to one thing. This is a little lock. This lock means lock the perspective of the length and width. So if I lock that and I make this, instead of 3, I make it 6, notice both the X and Y on your rectangle changed. If I hit undo. Now if I take that lock off, now if I make it 6, only the length changed. So that locking perspective is pretty important. I'm going to hit back, and I'll lock it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is your name tag outside. And at this point, show you a little fancy move. I can change the corners if I want, get a couple different shapes. And I can start increasing the size of those corners, and you can see if you zoom in, makes a little fancy graphic, even just rounded. So I'll do it rounded. That's kind of nice. Since this is a vector cut, the thickness of this line matters to the laser. You want to make it, from over here you see width, hairline. Hairline means infinitely thin path or vector cut for the laser. All right. If this screen were to close, it's called Object Properties, by the way. If I were to close that, it's Edit, and right at the bottom, Object Properties will pop up. I have the edge hairline. Great. Now we're going to pick the text, little A. Okay, this is a do not do. Do not drag this. Now when you type, it's just weird. It's called a text box, so I'm going to undo. Undo. When you click your text, come in here and just click. Don't drag. Now I can type Sean or whatever. Size it however you want. And by the way, whatever's clicked or acted is what these dimensions up here are talking about. All right. Zoom in here. And go ahead and pick your font. What's nice about a laser, it can be as crazy a font as you want. You have to resize that. The laser can do it. That's kind of a neat one. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to stretch my name that way. You just grab these little, or I could type in, if I put in 3, boom, well that's too big. Maybe 2.8. And you notice both dimensions are changing because I have the lockdown. So if I wanted to cut these letters out, let's say you wanted to, I could now come over here into this area. This is like a little old-fashioned ink pen, and I could make that hairline. That puts a hairline edge all around this text. And if I cut it, those letters would fall away. But one problem is, look at this A. If I do that, you'll also lose this island. So keep that in mind. There is a font called Stencil that holds all the islands in place. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to engrave the text, so I'm going to say none. Okay, at that point, I'm going to select everything again, move it to the upper left corner or wherever you want, and we are ready to send it to the laser for cutting. So I'm going to go File, Print, and then Preferences pulls up our box where we set our powers and speeds. I always teach people you're going to start from left to right filling in the information. Okay, the first decision is autofocus, and that's asking, are you going to let the laser set the height of your Z, or are you going to do the manual focus? Earlier in the tutorial I used the little manual gauge, but I'm going to check autofocus in this case, and you can see how the laser sets the Z. The next decision is center engraving. If I check this, then it's saying that the center of my artwork will be tied to wherever the center of the laser was set by the user. If you don't check this, then the artwork's going to decide where the artwork will be. I'm going to leave this unchecked and just let my artwork decide where the name tag is burned. Okay, then we come up here, raster, vector, or combined. And in our case, for this name tag, we're going to have both. The rastering is going to engrave the text, and the vector is going to cut the outside of the tag. Next is, it's asking what is the size of the artboard, and this number must match the number earlier that you set for the artboard. 24 inches, 12 inches is the size of the Epilog base in there, but if you did change it, it's fine. You just have to make sure it matches. Next is our raster and vector settings. It's kind of hard to see here, but on our wall we have a little cheat sheet or help sheet, and if I look up 1/4 inch wood or plywood, for rastering at 600 DPI, we're going to have a 70 speed, 100 power. If you wanted to burn it a little darker, you could maybe make this like 50 or even a little bit slower, but 7100 is what it recommends. Engraving is going to come from top down or down up. Usually we go top down. The dot pattern of the burning, standard is what you do 9 out of 10 times, but if you did want to do a photo, you might pick a Floyd Steinberg, which is a little bit finer dot pattern. We're going to go standard. For vector cutting, our speed's going to be 10, power is going to be 100, and the frequency is saying, it's kind of like how coarse is a knife. And for wood, you want it kind of coarse or in the 500 range. Acrylic, you want a finer frequency or like 5,000. Leather would be about 1,000. So I think we're all set. And now I'm going to hit OK, apply. One quick check your print preview to make sure your image is where you expect it to be, and print. Okay, always before you hit go, make sure you have on your vacuum. And the air assist is a little pump that pumps air onto your workpiece to keep it from flaming up or charring. Okay, it looks like it was successful. I saw the piece kind of drop. That's a good sign that it cut through. I will say this, if you're not sure if it cut through, don't move it until you test it a little bit, because once you move it, you can't cut it again. There we go, that's a successful cut. There's a name tag.